And then there's emotions, but then there's love, and it's source love. You remember source love. It's not an emotion, it's love. It's not the idea of love, it's the universe love. You remember that they're like the other religions that do the Buddhisty become one with, and they're like, it's all everybody combined, but it's love, and that's not an emotion or a space-time thing. That's love, and it's not a choice thing, but it's a good thing, and it's the source middle from which all the degrees of separation of anything, because of contrast with feelings physically or memories or space-time dimensions or change over time or vibrations or volumes, is all comparable over time. The original source middle of it, if there's nothing being compared and split haired apart where it was in the first place, because there's just going on, and that's fine I perceive it, that's fine. But before you do all the splitties, there was this source love when we were all together and one. Oh, I felt a nodule, and then I thought, there's a bumpy, and now it smells. But I thought, why is there bumpy? And then I looked and I was like, oh, it's his tail. And I thought, that's too high up to be his tail. That's his spine bone, like his coccyx. And I was trying to decide the anatomy of the doggy tail, and then there was a smell. Smell is not part of an anatomy. It's a change over time. You can only perceive smell because it was perceived differently before. You need time and contrast. So if there's only different ways to explain it, but no change over time, then there's no smell, because you need time. You need it to have changed over time, and for there to be the different ways to explain it and experience it over time. 2 dimensions, and they both have to move together for you to describe anything or measure anything. It can't just be one. It can't just be one. It could be an infinity experience. I know it's not real, like out, like when you die and come back or get shown things from your like real out of body near-death experiences stuff. It's different, but even though there's that difference, I'm scratching it. It all came from love. That's where it came from. But I don't know how the source was love if that's not in contrast to something. So if this source stuff is love, how can it be love if it has to be in contrast to not love for it to be love? So how is the, but like we all know, like everyone says, oh, the source is, it's like the love and the infinity, God, everyone stuff. But how is that if that's not in contrast to anything? To like absence of that stuff or against a background. So if God is love, what's that separated? What's the source? Doesn't there have to be a source that's separated from to be able to describe love? Volunteering to descend a dimension where you can describe love in contrast to something else. But you went down a dimension just to describe that. So what's up the dimension before it's split? There's love and whatever the other thing was to perceive love, because that was only in comparison to something else. But what about before you split it all apart to perceive it, when it was all together, when it was just one, when you weren't comparing things? It was just one. It's like it was just one, and you can like dip into the one and know that it's there and it's peaceful and infinity and exists, but then it's a way or a thing or a dimension but with no contrast. It's like the blank world, like when you go up to where there's no comparing anything. That's like when he chose blank world. Remember on the Midnight Gospels where he chose blank world?
Oh, okay.
Because if you're not comparing anything, like color in contrast to other colors or emotions or volume intensities or sound qualities or changes over time, if you're not just experiencing or describing any of that because of contrast opposites where they can compare, then it's like blank world, and you can sit with that, and that's okay. But then you can go down to comparing experiences just to see how they split apart, and you can describe that opposites and intensities in different ways, and that's okay experience to see and perceive all those things mishmashed together, how they can be perceived with your senses, but not just body senses or brain senses or emotion senses or spirit or soul senses. You can sit with it all just being one, whether there's change over time or not, or movement or not, or feeling or burning or not, or location or not. Like whether, you know how when you shave sometimes, if you're shaving every day, and then you can get razor burn sometimes, and then when you sweat, it's like getting salt in the micro wound, and then it can feel itchy because of inflammation, and it's bothered about that. And that whole process, I can just have the memory of it because it happened to me before, but not recently and not now, because I'm not shaving now. But even if it never happened to me, you can imagine it or feel it, or imagine the little hair stubble follicles and the little feeling around each one of them of like burning. It feels like little burnings around every little hair stubbles, and it's like a forest of chopped down trees, but around each little stump, instead of something there's nothing happening. There's just a feeling and a location to the feeling. It's not happening in the stump, in the middle of the stump, or in the background lip, feel, foreground, dirt, earth. It's just in the crack opening of the earth in the blank space in between, around where there's the little stumpy coming out, and the little crack space in between. That's where the feelings are. And the feeling around each little stump in that location, in the little circle location, is that they're feeling a burning feeling. But that's not a good or bad. There's no suffering to it. It's just an experience. They're just feeling it. That's okay. It's okay. And so you can see them where they're doing that, and you can love them where they're at. Like the episode where there's the little prisoner guy, and you just kind of love him in his little prison, and he makes his little progress. There's like goodwill towards everything. Oh, I know. He's, come on. I know. This one just wants to know that I'll be okay with it, and I will. So you can just love everything and have goodwill towards all the different experiences, but that doesn't have to be in contrast to bad will, or I don't know why. Man, did you know that there's like how you can only love something in contrast to the opposite feeling? How you can love something only because you could have chosen to hate it or to be indifferent to it or something, right? And so that's the only way you can love it, is because there was other choices. Right. Otherwise, there's no thing. But if you take away all the splits of choices, so there's no decisions you have to make or split or contrast. There's no contrast. You can still have like a love or a good intention, and it doesn't have to be in contrast to a bad intention. Like at the root there, it can be positive without the contrast against it. Like love without the opposite of love. Just only the good one. She's looking at me while also farting. She's like healing me from having this smell at the same time. Like licking my emotional wounds by licking my body symbolically for the assault on my central nervous system. that her fart inflicted. Oh, he's edgy and scared because of the music a little bit. He's not. He was aiming to pee or something. You know, there's different. Some animals can perceive things differently, or can see wavelengths outside of the wavelength that we're stuck and limited to, like animals that can see infrared and stuff like that, right? That's on just the light spectrum of wavelengths and stuff that they can perceive. But also there's like the alive dead or the spiritual vibration spectrum, and how like dogs can see spirit, like ghost / spirity presences. You know how dogs, they were barking at nothing, but it was like, and they depict that in movies, but because of like everyone is widely known experience that people have all the time, right? And so I wonder if, I've wondered that already, that like dogs aren't completely cut off from the spirit, kind of like babies, how they have a little bit of veil drawn. It's not all the way veiled on like babies or half dead dying people. They're not fully veiled. It's like the baby, it's like, it's half on because they're in transition, right? Transitioning in, so they get a little bit of saying the pre birth life stuff, and then as you're dying, you get to experience some of the transition stuff there because you're in transit, and then you move to the next way things are or whatever. But I wonder if dogs in their fixed state are not fully veiled, right? They're like they still have access to where they can see some of the infinity things or people, whether they're dead or alive or spirit stuff. But because they never got it fully drawn on them. And that's just not a line that they have to deal with the distinguishing because of the difference, the opposites and differences. So that's not a thing. Oh, they clipped it off before it was like mid-sound. I still don't all the way understand that, how source love doesn't have to be in contrast to a comparative alternate emotional option, but still be like positive and good and existing without having to be in contrast to non-existence or badness. Isn't that weird?
Maybe. Is anything weird? Or just is?
That's right. Is anything weird or it just is? Like the fishy